Hello fellow colorists, Jody here. Welcome to the channel JL Colorist. I hope you're all doing great. Today I wanted to do a short video on how I use Ranger's Glossy Accents in my adult coloring. There are not very many videos on how to use them in adult coloring itself. I started using Ranger Glossy Accents for probably the past year, and there are definitely some tips that I'd like to share with you today. There is one other video that I want to give a shout out to the channel, Emma Colors 2020. She did a video a year ago, and I have honed my skills based on her video when I watched it a year ago. So shout out to Emma, and I'll link her channel below so you can see her video as well. So what is Glossy Accents? And I'll explain what exactly it is and where I use it in my coloring, and then we will go and do a couple of examples, and I'll show you how I actually apply it. And first off, this is what it comes in. It comes in two sizes. It comes, and I don't have the small size, so it comes in a small size similar to Stickles. It is a Ranger product. It is a glossy finish. It is like a milky white glue. It comes in this size bottle, and I'll go off camera and open the bottle for you. Okay, so here is what it looks like in the original large bottle. So this is 2 fluid ounces. I bought at Hobby Lobby in the United States for $4.49. In Canada, my original bottle I bought from Michael's, and it was about $12. So it's not a cheap product. You don't need a lot of it, and you'll notice that this bottle here is not in this bottle, and that's because over time the nozzle is very tiny, and what has happened to mine in particular is that glue will actually dry in the actual nozzle. This clear cap does not have a pin, it's just a cap. So I ended up having to trim off the tip, and that left even more of an air gap in here. So once you start having to trim off the tip, if you don't keep it clear of product, then it hardens and you get into trouble. So that is why I ended up transferring mine into a fine line applicator. So I bought this at Blick. You can get it at most hobby stores, and what it is, I bought the 18 gauge size needle, and it's just another applicator, but it has a very long tip, and it has this pin that goes all the way down into this area here, so it keeps it from getting clogged. I just labeled it with my little label maker, and that is how I use it now. It does take some squeezing, so if you have hand cramping issues, you're going to want to use it on small areas, because if you're trying to do it on a large area, you've got to keep that pressure on, and you could definitely start getting some hand cramping. So I'm going to show you tip number 1. Do not shake the Glossy Accents. This is not a product where you want to shake it up and then apply it. You want to turn it gently upside down, squeeze it, let it start coming out, and then you start applying it. If you start shaking it up, you're going to get air bubbles in it, and air bubbles are the main thing that we are trying to avoid when you are applying Glossy Accents. So tip number 1, do not shake the bottle, and in fact it does say that on the back of the packaging. It clearly indicates do not shake, it will create air bubbles. And yes, the other thing is, while you do have to squeeze, you want to squeeze gently and consistently. You don't want to, turn it upside down and just go and squeeze really hard and just have a splash coming out. You want it to come out slowly and evenly, so slow is good. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples that I have already done. So this is the Romantic Country, the second tale. I'm currently working in this book, but I wanted to show you examples of where I have used it in the past. So Glossy Accents is 3D, so it will leave a raised area on the page, so keep that in mind. If you have not already done the page opposite, you may have some issues coloring on top of a double-sided page with glossy accents. So the tip for that is, if you're going to be coloring on the other side, use some Gamsol to smooth out or blend that area on the other side after you're done coloring, and you'll get rid of the bumps and stuff. So that's a tip for you there. I have used it in 2 different picture frames here, and I've gone around this whole area. So you can be very precise with glossy accents, which is nice. And as you see, so it definitely looks like there is glass in the picture frame. On the mirror on this side, instead of using glossy accents, I used a different medium because I had enough going on this page, but I did use it on these 2 areas up here. Now this area here is quite a large area for glossy accents, but you'll notice that the paper did not buckle. So tip number 2 is your paper matters, and I'll show you an example of what I mean. So this is an Erie book, and it can take some stuff. So there is a little buckling up here, but it's not noticeable. However, if doing a page in a very cheap, very thin Amazon type paper, this is from Sea of Colors by Angela Gonzalez. The illustrations are great, but the paper is horrible. And this area here, you'll notice that it buckled the whole page. So this area up here, there's no buckling, a little bit, but not significant. But over here, you'll see how much it wrinkled the page. So your paper quality matters, and you may want to think about that when you're applying your glossy accents. So those are 2 examples. I'll pop this back in, and I'll show you a few more. So when to use glossy accents and be the most effective is, I started with just using it on eyes. So every eye in this book I have used glossy accents on. And even though this is Amazon paper, it's a little bit thicker than the Sea of Colors paper, and I'm not doing large areas, so I haven't had really any issues with buckling. So in this case, I did not color underneath his eyes. I just strictly put the glossy accents on, and in this case I did color underneath it. So you are able to color underneath the page, or sorry, on the paper, before applying the glossy accents. That is also something to be cautious of. So depending on what you're doing, what medium you're using, if you're using a water reactive medium, glossy accents is a liquid. It does take 24 hours to dry, so it's going to be sitting on your page for quite a while. So here's an example of where it has run. So this is from Land Under the Microscope by Rita Berman, and I used it on the title page for the microscope. And if you noticed, I used Zig water-based clean color markers on this, and it actually made the colors run a little bit, and then I have a little bit of a stain here. So if you are using a water-based medium, make sure that they are completely dry before attempting to put glossy accents on top. I did this fairly quickly right after I did the marker, and obviously it picked up some of the color, and I dragged it upwards a little bit. So note to self, and it was also one of my first times using the glossy accent, so I could have done a smoother job. So you'll notice that it's a little bit bumpier than some of my later attempts at using it. So another tip is that you need to go slow. You need to start in one area and go slow back and forth. Don't, kind of go all over and zigzag. Start at the top or start at the side and fill it, and consistently go across your area that you're covering, and do not stir it up because you could reactivate some of the pigment and drag it elsewhere. So I'd like to share some of those tips. The easiest spots for glossy accents is on all of the little eyes. Just a little drop will do ya. So that's, you can use glossy accents as small or in large areas. I also wanted to show you how sometimes, so here's some examples from Chris Rainiac's Morning Scribbles, the Frog's Friends edition. And here's a sneak peek at a page I did in May 2023. And in this instance, there's a lot of glass on this page, and I really wanted to use glossy accents to get some of that shine, but I knew that I did not want to waste, basically, an eighth of a bottle on something this size. So what I instead did is I did a ring around the entire area where it's glass, and then also where there was highlights, I used glossy accent there. So same over here. I've got glossy accents all around the ring, and then I've used it on the highlight areas. So you still get that shine of glass appearance, but I haven't covered the whole page with glossy accents. And let's take a look at his eyes. So his eyes, normally you would do the whole area in glossy accents, but instead this time I used stickles on the highlights. I used a blue glaze pen, so I still get that shiny effect, but I get the color from the blue glaze. And then for the white of the eye, I used glossy accents. So you can use your glossy accents along with other items that are glaze-like, so that you're adding your glossy accents, but you're using it in a more strategic places and manner. So this page still has all that shine, but it's got a twinkle in his eye from stickles, it's got some glaze pen and glossy accents all combined together, and I think it is really effective. And in this case, similarly, I have used the glossy accents not on the whole eye, but I used it just on the highlights. So you get that shine from the highlights, and I also used colored glaze for the iris color of his eye. So it's still, you get that shine, but I haven't used the entire, because these are huge eyes. I mean, that eye is like over 2 inches big, so that would be a lot of glossy accents to use. So instead I use it sparingly, and even I did the same on the little eyes. I could have done the whole glossy accents, but I think the highlights catch the glint of it equally as well. So that's another example of how I use glossy accents. Now that you've seen me use it in a variety of spots, in this case, one last example is I actually used glossy accents on the whole iris and the highlights, but not on the white of the eye. So I still get the shine. So there's no police out there. Like here, I've used it on the whole eye. So you've got the whole eye done. And in here, I've only got the highlights. So depending on the size of the area, it really determines on how much I'm going to use the glossy accents. So let's go ahead and put the glossy accents on the page I'm currently working on. So I've zoomed you in on a page I'm currently working on. And another tip is, once you have applied the glossy accent, you're going to need to let it dry for 24 hours. I know some people say you can only, you let it dry for a couple hours and you're good to go. That has not been my experience. My experience has been let it dry for a full 24 hours and then you're good. You can, if you start touching it too soon or you close your book too soon, you will get marks and indents because it is a thick medium, and you need to let it dry. So I'm going to use the glossy accents in my fine liner applicator. I always make sure that I have squeezed it off. And like Emma Colors 2020, her channel, she says to squeeze it out separately. So just keep squeezing. Once you have it, so once I have it squeezed out, okay, I'm going to then come over to my page. And I'm still squeezing it. I'm going to start, and I'm just lightly glancing over the page, and I am going, I'm keeping the nozzle of the glue glossy accents in the glossy accents for the whole entire time. Okay, I haven't let up my pressure. I'm still having pressure, and there's a little bit of a drop there, so I'm going to come put the drop on the page, and then keeping the nozzle touching the page, I'm going slowly and applying it. Now, you can't just scribble. I've seen people just say, oh, just put it down and scribble away. Well, that's when you start getting air bubbles. So you want to keep your nozzle in the glossy accents itself and moving in a slow, methodical pattern. If you want it to be raised and quite noticeable, you add a thicker layer. If you think you've got a bubble in it, you need to get to that bubble and you need to drag it to the edge. Okay, so that's enough. I'm going to wipe off this, and I'm going to put the cap on right away. And even though it has the pin, you still need to cap it right away. It is glue. It is going to dry. Now, I've also put this on a mat. Let me just wipe this off. I've put this on a flexible cutting mat, and now I'm going to take a little clip. So let me zoom you back out. I'm taking a little clip and I'm clipping it to the top. I'm now going to take this and I'm going to put it on a separate desk that I leave things to dry on, because you do not want anything to fall on this book. It needs to lie flat. You can't, stand it up right now, and because it is liquid, it will roll or drip off. So leave it for 24 hours in a safe spot and you will be happy about that. I also recommend that you do all your coloring around the area or underneath, obviously, beforehand. So like even the window casing, I've already colored that before putting on the glossy accents. I'm not going to want to do the windows and then come back later and do the casing, because you will never be able to get close to that again, because it may have seeped a little bit or just not 100%, like it's on the line on this edge. You won't get, so it's best to color and have everything done. It's definitely a last step kind of situation. This page is still under construction, obviously, but I did want to show you how I used it. So this time I've used it on a window, I've used it on picture frames, I've used it on eyes. Anything that you want to appear glass-like, you can use it on. So in summary, I just wanted to give you a few tips. 1, don't shake your bottle. Keep the pressure steady. Go consistently in one area. Don't stir it up and go all over crazy, because you will end up having air bubbles on your page, and that isn't what we want. It's very difficult to get air bubbles out of the glossy accents if you have it. This pin applicator does help. You can, if you do see an air bubble, you can kind of try and stir it or drag it to the edge or pop it, but you want to avoid those to start with. 2, know your paper. If you have really thin paper, then using glossy accents in a large area is going to buckle that paper, and maybe you want to use less or do it in a different manner. or just know you're going to be buckling your paper. And if you are going to be using super thin paper, then hopefully it's one-sided, because buckling the paper will also affect your second page on the other side. Third tip is, remember, if you're using a water-based medium, to let it fully dry before putting any glossy accents on it, and make sure you're not agitating the pigment. Once you, even if it is dry, you want to be very careful. You want to just add glossy accents at the end. You don't want to be mixing up the pigment underneath. Watercolor will reactivate with liquid, so just put it on and leave it. So that's another tip. If you're just going to be using it for small dotted eyes, then get a tiny bottle. If you're going to be using it on windows and you do quite a bit of coloring, like myself, then you may want to get the larger bottle. However, if you're going to get the larger bottle, you need to really take care of this tip. So I suggest cleaning the tip off after every use, using a pin to try and keep it open. But if you start cutting off, like right now the tip touches the tip or the top of this bottle. Once you start trimming the tip off, you're leaving air in the bottle and it is going to cause you trouble. So then I would suggest transferring some of your glossy accent. You don't have to move all of it out. You can move like half of it out into squeeze applicators similar to this, and that may also help. So using the size of the bottle to the size of your projects is probably, in the long run, more economical, because if you spent $12 on this bottle and half of it ended up becoming difficult to use and hard because it is glue and it will dry out, then you might as well have spent less than that and used the smaller bottle. I hope that these tips help you use glossy accents in a easier manner. I hope you have fun, and I look forward to seeing how lots of people use glossy accents in different ways. I think it's has added quite a bit of dimension and funness to my pages, so I definitely am glad that I learned how to use it. I'm still learning new ways to use it every time, but I do think that this, you could have done the whole area in glossy accents. I think that the way I applied it in this case really shows the versatility of using glossy accents. And there weren't a lot of videos on using it in adult coloring. There's a few on card making, but other than Emma Colors 2020, I couldn't find another video. So I hope this video helps you today. I hope you have a creative and colorful week. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.